sessions if need be. Alrighty, the next session would be Daniel. If you're ready, I'll let you kind of take over.
Thanks, but can you hear me all right? I'm just in a room, so obviously I'm in a room. Everyone's in a room. Hey, everyone. Thanks,
Yep.
but I feel like going after Tivi was kind of like a bad idea. Everything I'm going to show is like really like boring and lame and crappy in comparison. So what I thought I'll do is just quickly run through Stepwise Planner V2, something I built up for the AI tour, just to really evaluate and look at how does Stepwise Planner V2 differ from the old Stepwise and handlebars and so on. So many of you have probably already used it. If you've already used Stepwise Planner V2, you're already converted, you've tried it out, chuck something in the chat. I want to know how many people have used it and how many people I'm basically going to be saying, hey, look. But what I'll do is I will just present quickly what I sort of started with. So one of the things I've been working on with a lot of the partners I work with is hyper-personalization, right? Which is generating content or very personalized content for their users or with their users using Gen AI by pulling together a number of different sources and sort of saying, well, how do we make their experience super engaging, massively personalized? So one of the things we always talk about, chat's awesome. We love chat. Chat's fantastic. Azure Chat's amazing, as what Timmy was just showing. But I don't know about you, but I kind of sometimes want the AI to just help me without me having to chat to it. So we often think with our partners, or our partners think, how do we just use AI without having to have a user interact in it and building a chat type of experience? So that's where personalized content generation comes in. And this is an example of personalized content generation, right? This is a personalized podcast that, when this customer Jane goes to Contoso Books, which is a website or mobile app or even an email, presented with hyper-personalized content based on who she is, her past searches and past purchases through Contoso, and generates some podcasts that maybe it reads it to her as audio or converts it to in text form, and maybe generate some images based on it, right? But this is the idea. We want to pull together a whole bunch of information. Now, there's lots of ways we can do that, but we'll go through how, and I'll show you what I did with SK to do the same thing, or improve it with Semantic Kernel, Stepwise Planner V2. But one of the other things that hyper-personalization drives is really, engagement, and by increasing accessibility, right? You can deliver content in different ways. You can generate content that's more accessible to other people. And so that's why another big value add for this sort of type of customization or special personalization. So how do we typically do this? Right, we start with an app. On the left here, we've got our comms application or whatever we're going to build. That is going to make a request to our Copilot. It's going to make a request to our AI orchestrator. And our AI orchestrator is probably going to be some static native code and logic that says, pull some stuff from this API, pull some stuff from this API, go get this database and get some stuff, and then combine that with a prompt, and then feed that off to Azure OpenAI or whatever your LLM is, and then get a result back, run some safety and quality on it, and then send it back to the customer as a user, as whatever the form they want. So it could be audio, it could be generating an image. Right. So if I was to do this I'm going to stop sharing. If I was to do this, I'm going to share my screen now. If I was to do this via OpenAI, this is kind of what it would look like, right? I have a very complicated system message down here, which tells me, you're there, right? Blah blah blah. You've got a lot of goals. You've got a whole lot of information. but guidance on what you're about to achieve, considers the customer's location, utilize the base safety and guardrails. Then we've got a section on safety and guardrails. This is just a bit of prompt engineering anyway. And we go through, set up the guardrails, set up tone and personality, and then we basically dump the requirements into a message from the user, right? So this is going to land in the user message. So we're going to say customer details. We're going to put recent searches, which is just pure CSV. We could have just extracted that straight from the database. There's no formatting or anything, no magic there. Suggested books, we again could have pulled that from an API. It could be a machine learning model behind that, could be a Gen AI, could be another semantic kernel, right? And we run that. Now I'm just going to quickly run this, and it'll generate a podcast. Nothing particularly surprising or magic there, right? We could then, set up do some, speech to text, etc. So I'm not going to go through that because that's not what we're actually here to look at. What we want to look at is semantic kernel doing this. Now, I'm assuming everyone on the call kind of knows what semantic kernel is. So rather than going and showing you a slide introducing what semantic kernel is, actually I might just quickly, because I did talk about how I actually do this quickly. Give me a second. Yeah, Lemmy. You got your hand up. You had your hand up.
Oh, that was from before, mate. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. My bad. So essentially, what I did is I said, well, I want to use Stepwise Planner V2. This was the whole purpose. Was I want to see what this is like. Use all the other planners. I want to know what Stepwise V2 is different. What's it like? So what I essentially did was created a step kernel. Added a bunch of functions or plugins, I should say, use the old name, sorry. I made those plugins essentially were just returning pure text, pure CSV, right? In the real world, I would have called a database or, gone to an API, or I could have made it could be another semantic plugin, or it could have been an open AI plugin, right? Yeah. So it could be any number of things. So what does that actually look like? Oops, go and share my Visual Studio. Could have done it in Visual Studio Code, but yeah, I'm using the full fat Visual Studio. So this is what I did. So create the kernel, pretty much standard stuff. No one is surprised there. I then use the import plugin from type. To import two plugins. Now, one plugin had a single function, that's the time plugin, and one plugin had multiple customer plugins. And I'll show you those in a second. And then I have my prompt template, which again is pretty much the same thing. I've got all my guardrails, I've got my requirements, my guidelines, everything else. I set up my Stepwise Planner. Now, the Stepwise Planner V2 is called function calling Stepwise Planner, Stepwise Planner, right there. We set up the config, because this is a looping planner. This planner can loop around for multiple executions. So I set up max iterations to 5, which is actually really the number of functions I'm calling. If I was, I could change that and set max token limit 4,000. I am using GPT-4 because that is required. I can't remember if it's required by this, but I found that was certainly the only way this would work. I then executed the Stepwise Planner. Now, previously, you used to have to invoke, the old planners, you'd create the plan and then you'd invoke the plan, if you're familiar with the old planners. Now you can just execute async and off it goes. And all I did in my plugins, if I look at the time plugin, all I'm doing is writing the planner call that, this was called, just so that I can demonstrate what actually the flow of the planner. And I've set up the other things. I've got the description retrieves the current time in UTC. I should have actually used the logger, but I was too lazy. And it just returns the date time. Customer plugin has multiple plugins in it. Now, again, this is purely just returning some CSV, right? It's just saying here's here's some junk, here's some text. I could have formatted them different ways, but hey, why not? So again, I've given it, put a lot of time getting the description right? If I didn't tweak this description and make it right, it would often not call. It would often go, oh, I don't need this. So getting this right took a couple of iterations. And also making sure I had that correct description in the parameter that was passed, right? It was always passing the email address of the customer. Again, I had the get customer suggested books. And I also had the given the get customer local events. Now, all of these could be much smarter. I could be doing multiple calls for other things. I could be doing a whole bunch of other stuff, but I didn't. So when I run this, and it does take about 60 seconds to run, so I've actually pre-run it. This is what I will get. Effectively, it figures out first thing I need to do is call the customer, get the customer profile. It always calls that first. I've never had it not call it first. Then it will go and call get suggested books. Cool. But if you notice in my prompt, my original prompt, I said you need to get books. Actually, I will show you that. You'll need to get books only in the last 6 months, right? So the planner has figured out, or actually the LLM that was executed by the plan has figured out that, hey, you need to do this. You need to get the date. So it's sensibly called the get current UTC date time, return the current date, and it's then used that to pass that to get customer local events, because get customer local events has a time period pass of those parameters. So it has figured that out. And now it is produced that podcast. And as you can see, it's figured out that Jane's quite into Stephen King. It's figured out Jane's interested into DevOps. This could be Lanny, right? I should have used Simon as my demonstration. And it's made some recommendations. It's also looked at her searches. And again, what I might do is actually, if I had a memory store, RAG, etc., I would have maybe had a plugin that goes off and looks up products that Contoso Books has available. And I put links and I do all that cool stuff, but I didn't have time. And then it's worked out, hey, we've got an event in Sydney that Stephen King's going to be at, and you can go along to that. So we've driven an additional value and engagement for Jane by giving her more personalized content. I could change the prompt, give it more access to other APIs, and I could extend this. What I have found though, the Stepwise Planner V2 is
Dan.
slow. Yeah.
Just here, mate. We're seeing your code still, not the actual.
Oh, mate.
response.
Okay, good call. Yeah, because I didn't share my window. I shared my screen. I shared my window. Let me just share the.
I remember my first demo.
Oh. Lanny's really annoyed at me for not using him as the example. Let me just, where is it?
And let me tell you, my first demo was rubbish compared to yours, mate.
Thanks, mate. You make me feel much better. So you're going to have to see my whole screen because I couldn't find the actual window. So this is essentially what it came back with. So I was telling you all about what the planner was doing. I'm going to make that bigger. This. You know what?
Thanks.
So
See it now.
you can see now. So we got our planner. Go away. We got our planner, get customer profile, as we called that. Planner called customer suggested books. The planner then went and got the current date and time. And then the planner went, okay, well, you know what? We also, now that we've got the current date and time, we can actually go and get those events. And then we've gone and produced the podcast. And yeah, I'm definitely going to change this to Simon Lamb. But what did I find with this? And after also talking to Matthew about this on a previous call, one of the things I was talking about was actually, this is actually quite slow. This takes a little while to generate, right? Because it's going back every step on there. It's actually executing, looking at the plan and going, okay, what do I need to do? Do the next thing, do the next thing. So good, but you don't want to do it if your customer's waiting, right? So one of the things I talked to Matthew, and he said, actually, maybe the auto function calling feature could be a better way of doing that. So that's something I'll probably investigate next. What I also want to investigate next, and started to work on this, but couldn't do it because it wasn't supported yet, was agents. I wanted to have a quality agent, or actually an agent that popped in at the last minute and said, does this meet Contoso's brand guidelines? Is this safe? Are you making recommendations that you should? Are you doing the right things? So there was going to be a quality agent in there as well. So this is kind of what I learned. I love the fact that it's very, very good as figuring out what it needs to do and making a decision about the right things to call. The planner just generally works. I had to have some weird funniness that happens on occasion that I need to figure out, which just doesn't return anything. It's like the last step, but that could be the number of iterations being hit. Monitoring on this planner is a bit tricky. It's a black box. You can't, if something goes wrong, it's hard to figure out what. And that is another thing that Matthew's also talked about in a previous call, the SK community call. I think it was one of the US ones, the EMEA ones. He talks a lot about the monitoring of that. So keen to hear anyone who's used the Stepwise V2, how they found it, if they found any problems or challenges. That's my demo.
I think the other thing you said, Disa, was the monitoring and just getting in, because he uses the term black box a lot when he's talking, and they recognize that, just about being able to kind of like adjust the prompt and stuff. So with that, so that you can actually get in there and kind of modify it to get to do what you want it to do, rather than just sending it in there and waiting for a response.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wasn't looking at the chat, and I asked who's been using the Stepwise. Did anyone say they were? Stepwise V2, sorry. I'd love to know also anyone who's used Stepwise V1 and Stepwise V2 and if they found it different.
I haven't used Stepwise V2, but definitely Stepwise V1. The only, I guess, question is whether it's available on Azure OpenAI. Because the example that I just pasted in there, it's using OpenAI, which I assume.
Stepwise V2 is. I was using Azure OpenAI there. So when I ran that was using Azure OpenAI. So it does work. I think the right model is required. I believe I think from memory, if I tried it with 3.5 Turbo 1106, and I got a something or other, but I could be, I can't remember.
Okay.
But that was my takeaway. I love the Stepwise Planner. I love the fact that I can just add a whole bunch of stuff to it and just go figure it out, and it will go figure it out. But I don't like, I think the speed is not optimal, and I'm really keen to try the auto function calling. So if anyone's using auto function calling, keen to hear your thoughts or opinions. Does everyone know what auto function calling is? If you don't, check out the previous Semantic Kernel office hours with Matthew. He runs it through. Back to you, Vic.
That is in one of the examples in the syntax, kernel syntax examples, right? So
yeah,
it should be in there. So that's pretty much just going to paste in the URL to that.
Yeah, I was kind of, right. I was thinking about stuff, Disa, like kind of, I guess the like Stepwise Planner and like that kind of Merkle, or we just going giving it threads or giving it it's going asking questions itself versus kind of agents, and like it feels like agents give you the ability to put something in between those steps, like where you're going and asking something and it'll and you can go and kind of adjust it, whereas the Stepwise Planner, you're saying, hey, go do this, and it just goes and figures it out itself and just decides what the next step is going to be, whereas agents kind of would allow you to jump in between and do different things. It's pretty mind warping.
Yeah.
That stuff.
Because I started with agents and went, right, this is amazing, and then realized it was only available currently for OpenAI, and I was doing a Azure OpenAI demo, so I thought I feel make sure I can do it in Azure OpenAI. So yeah, there's now you can do it with Azure OpenAI. It's just the time could actually. Has there been an update to SK to support agents for Azure OpenAI? I know there was some waiting.
I
do
think
you-
that's in the roadmap. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Because I think, yeah, they needed to wait for the Azure OpenAI SDK team to support agents before they could implement, before SK could implement it, right? That was the.
Yeah. Same thing with Assistance API, which I don't think, well, last week anyway, but last week hasn't been, it's not supported yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so waiting for the new package coming out of that.
Yeah, because a lot of that the agent stuff is based on their initial implementation was based on Assistance API, right? And then Matt Bolanos talked a lot about bringing agents, to not relying on the Assistance API to be able to just do it with anything. So that's definitely on the roadmap. But yeah, as for just their initial implementation with the Assistance API, that could be like any day.
Yeah. Fantastic.